Friends, we gather here this afternoon to celebrate the life and to honor the memory of Jean Letoffsky. Jean's family so very much appreciates your being here with us, which offers them a great deal of comfort and support. Adonai ma'adam v'teda'ehu ben enosh v'chashvehu. O Lord, what are we that you have regard for us? What are we that you are mindful of us? We are like a breath. Our days are as a passing shadow. We come and we go like grass, which in the morning shoots up renewed, in the evening it fades and it withers. You cause us to turn to dust, saying, return, you mortal creatures. Would that we were wise, that we understood whither we are going. For when we die, we carry nothing away. Our glory does not accompany us. Mark the wholehearted and behold the upright. They shall have peace. The author of the first of the Bible's 150 Psalms tells us in language both poignant and succinct the nature of the good life and the fruits of that life. Happy are those who have not followed the counsel of the wicked, nor taken the path of sinners, nor joined the company of the insolent. Rather, the teaching of God is their delight, and they study that teaching day and night. They are like a tree planted beside streams of water that yields its fruit in its season, whose foliage never fades and whose fruit always flourishes. Before I read along with you the 23rd Psalm, I want to make a comment about one feature of this remarkable poem. One of its features is kind of an elegant symmetry. Whenever we have a list of an odd number of items, there is going to be a middle item. In Hebrew, the 23rd Psalm has 55 words, which means that the middle word is number 28, with 27 on either side. The middle word is atah, you. As you may know, and I encourage you to look at this yourself, the psalm begins in the third person singular. God maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. But then the psalm makes a move from the third person to the second person singular. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. Ki ata imadi, for you are with me. It's that word you that is the middle word. And what does this suggest? It suggests that the most comfort that we can have during our time of difficulty, during our time of mourning, is to have another person be a thou, be a you next to us. It's not so much the presence of our words, but the presence of ourselves that makes the difference to mourners. As the psalm promises God's presence to us in a time of difficulty, so do we, in the spirit of imitation of God's actions, commit ourselves to being present to the family during their times of difficulty. This is the gift that God promises us. This is the gift that we can offer one another. Let us recite the 23rd Psalm together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He maketh me to lie down in green pastures. He leadeth me beside the still waters. He restoreth my soul. He guideth me in straight paths for his name's sake. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. Thou preparest a table before me in the presence of mine enemies. Thou hast anointed my head with oil, my cup runneth over. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Esa enai el heharim me'ayin yavo Ezri. Ezri me'im Adonai osei shamayim va'aretz. I lift mine eyes unto the mountains. What is the source of my help? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. God will not let your foot give way. Your protector will not slumber. Yea, the protector of Israel neither slumbers nor sleeps. God is your guardian. God is your protection at your right hand. The sun will not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will guard you from all harm. God will guard your soul, your going and your coming, now and forever. In one of Scripture's most evocative passages, Kohelet, the author of the biblical book of Ecclesiastes, reminds us that for everything there is a season, a time for every experience under the heavens, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to refrain from embracing, a time to seek and a time to lose, a time to keep and a time to discard, a time to tear and a time to sow, a time to keep silence and a time to speak. I'm pleased to now introduce Jan Mahler, a close family friend for many years, and she is going to render verses of the 23rd Psalm.
Gam ki elech begeitz hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi gam ki elech begeitz hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hima inachaluni gam ki elech begeitz hamavet lo irara ki ata imadi shivtecha umishantecha hima inachamuni.
When Jean Letoffsky died this past Thursday, We lost a precious individual, a person we all loved and admired. Her death opens a hole in our hearts and in our community. Jean was born and raised in the Washington Heights area of Upper Manhattan, the only child of her loving parents, Bertel and Arthur Loeb. Jean's grandparents lived with them as well. And Jean long remembered the long walk she took with her beloved grandfather, who died when she was only 4 years old. Her grandmother, who was a tough and somewhat difficult person, continued to live with the family throughout Jean's childhood, and she had a powerful and somewhat problematic impact on the mood of the family's life. In addition, Jean's parents, who worked very hard, had difficulty making ends meet, and this added to something of the heavy environment in which Jean grew up. Now, Jean's brilliance displayed itself quite early in her life. She enrolled as a child at the Yeshiva University School for Girls, where she excelled, and later she attended the Soloveitchik Yeshiva, where she was one of the few girls who was allowed to participate in advanced Talmud studies. In addition, Jean had a kind of genius for languages, easily becoming fluent in German and Hebrew and Yiddish, and later in Spanish and in French. And as her family told me last evening when I met with them, Jean not only had an amazing fluency in these languages, she also had a profound interest in the origin and the grammars of those languages as well. And as we might expect from her deep involvement in languages, Jean had a vast vocabulary, easily offering definitions of words that others had no idea even existed. Moreover, Jean's facility with languages enabled her to do something quite astonishing. And that is to be able, effortlessly, to spell words backwards upon first hearing them, and easily to utter them backwards as well. In addition, Jean possessed what her family described as a kind of sixth sense about things. Before we could see it, her husband, Alan, said, before we could see it, Jean knew it. She could read into situations with uncommon penetration, and she was an excellent judge of character. In short, Jean's broad intelligence, her ready grasp of languages, along with her immersion in the sea of the Talmud, encourage us to apply to Jean that consequential and complex German word Bildung, which we might define as the harmonious formation and development of a person's various capacities, intellectual, aesthetic, moral, into a balanced and unified whole. Those of us who knew Jean and her many wondrous abilities and achievements know that she embodied the ideal of Bildung in her life and in her work. Indeed, Jean's life's work was libraries. And her true vocation as a librarian is one which she discovered early and cultivated with consummate professionalism and purpose throughout her life. She labored with love for 30 years as the director of the Aaron Garber Library of Siegel College of Jewish Studies. And during these years, Jean transformed a modest community college library into a first-rate academic library. And when the stability and even the future of that library was imperiled, Jean gathered support groups like the Friends of the Library, which advocated for it. And she imagined fundraising events like the regular Benny Bash, which brought in needed funds. As usual, Jean's clear vision, her resourcefulness, her resilience, and her ability to draw people to her and to her vision, all this made Jean the extraordinarily successful librarian that she was. Indeed, as the Dean of Cleveland Jewish Librarians. And for her 80th birthday celebration, her dear friend and colleague, Lissa Schachter, presented a magnificent tribute to Jean. Now, initially, I had planned to read only excerpts of this tribute. But when I looked more carefully at what Lissa had written and all that this tribute comprehends about Jean's many abilities and contributions, I decided to read it in its entirety. It will give you not only a deep sense of who Jean Letoffsky was, but also the kind of impact that she made on all who cherished her. Here is Lissa's tribute with the title, For Jean's 80th Birthday. If all she did was catch the balls the college president threw up in the air, Dayenu, it would have been enough. If all she did was digitize the college library and bring it into the 21st century, Dayenu. If all she did was grow and encourage the friends of the library, let's pretend we're sitting around the Seder table. If all she did was proofread materials with the keenest of eyes, if all she did was be a colleague extraordinaire for fellow workers on every level, if all she did was organize college records for the archives of the Western Reserve, if all she did was pioneer women chanting Torah and Megillah, if all she did was promote and enjoy the study of Yiddish in the community, if all she did was expertly, graciously bake, cook, and host, if all she did was raise a family of which she can be rightly proud, if all she did was model dealing with adversity with courage and with grace, if all she did was lift up colleagues and friends in times good and bad, and finally, how wonderful it is, with the support of her beloved Alan, that Jean performed these wonders for us, her loving friends in many communities in America and in Israel. And Lissa's tribute concludes, love you and miss you, Lissa. I myself knew Jean quite well during my years at the college. I remember her as a caring and helpful colleague, as an energetic and deeply devoted professional, and as a cherished personal friend. Jean is survived by her beloved husband of 59 years, Alan, by her daughters Sharon and Deborah, and her sons-in-law Marcelo and Howard, by her adored grandchildren, Itai, Ta'ir, Aiden, Daniel, and Lindy. She was predeceased by her parents, Bertel and Arthur, and predeceased as well by her son, Seth. Jean Letoffsky packed many lives into her 81 years. As loving wife, as devoted mother and grandmother, as institution builder, as librarian extraordinaire and scholar, and as a cherished colleague and friend. Those who loved and admired her will never forget her. Zichrona livracha, the memory of Jean Letoffsky will always be our blessing. Amen.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's such an honor to be invited to offer a song in memory of Jean. I have to tell you that I'm Enid Lader. I'm the Rabbi Emerita at Beth Israel, the West Temple. My husband and I, Harry, have been members of the temple for 40 years. And during that time, I guess maybe about 32 years ago, but who's counting, Jean came to our Friday night service to offer the sermon that evening on the Garber Library and Jewish books. And that was my first time meeting her. And that was before we even had a chance to meet Alan Letoffsky, who would serve as our rabbi for 13 years. Before he began as our rabbi, we were in the midst of needing a rabbi. And I remember standing in the open area in front of the entry doors at the Segal College at that time. And Jean came up to me, and it felt like cloak and dagger. I hear your congregation needs a rabbi. Well, yes. They should talk to Alan. You tell them to talk to Alan. Well, I told them, and they talked to Alan, and we had a wonderful friendship between Alan and Jean and our congregation that began at that point, and at this point now, it's 24 years ago. And I'm so privileged to have known her. She was a wonderful friend and a wonderful support when I decided that I was going to go off to rabbinical school to become a rabbi. And after becoming ordained, she looked at Harry and said, "So, do you know what you call the husband of the rabbi?" And Harry said, "I don't know." She said, "Lucky." We were tremendously lucky to know her and to love her. Yesh kochavim, there are stars. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. Yesh kochavim she'oram magia artza, rak kasher hem atzman havtu veinam. Yesh anoshim sheziv zichram meir, kasher hem atzmam einam, od betocheinu. Orot Ela amavikim bechashkat alayil heim shemarim ladam et haderech heim shemarim Ladam et haderech.
I now want to call on Jean's daughter, Deborah, and her son-in-law, Howard.
In the midst of my profound sadness, my predominant feeling is one of immense gratitude. I am so lucky that Jean Loeb Letoffsky is my mom. If you knew my mom, then you know that my mom was different. She looked different, almost never dyeing her hair, except once not too long ago when she got an orange streak in her silver hair. She was spunky. She hardly ever wore makeup and aged gracefully. She had a keen appreciation for nice things, a trait she inherited from my Oma. She loved funky shoes, clothing, and glasses. She always worked when my siblings and I were little kids. Sorry, just saw some of my friends are here. We learned to be independent and also developed a strong work ethic from both of our parents. My home was a place where visitors were frequent, current and former students, international visitors, exchange students, family, and so many friends. Sometimes I was jealous of all the attention my parents gave others, like to the lovely Lithuanian opera student who studied at Oberlin, or the exchange student from Venezuela, or the professor from Japan that my mom insisted she invite to Daniel's bris. That was very strange, I thought. As I matured, I recognized that both of my parents had the most wonderful, open, and big hearts with room for everyone, including the garage attendant at my parents' building, their exercise teacher at the YMCA, my mom's wonderful caregivers, and on and on. We lived a modest life, but resources were always available for ballet, for flute lessons, summer camp, youth group, concerts and plays, and of course Israel, visits and experiences. I learned a lot about my mom on an unforgettable trip to Europe in 1978 on our way to spend a sabbatical year in Jerusalem. In Germany, we had a chance to learn all about my mom's family, what happened to them, and the tremendous loss that her parents felt, experiences that they were never able to have. Knowing that, it wasn't surprising that my mom worked at Israel's Holocaust Museum, Yad Vashem, when we lived in Jerusalem, and then on a special project interviewing Wisconsin Holocaust survivors to gather their stories for the Wisconsin Historical Society. Our Jewish identity informed everything we did. We kept a kosher home in Wisconsin when very few others I knew did. We took the SAT on Sunday. We didn't attend school on all of the Yom Tov Jewish holidays. Passing on a strong sense of Jewish identity was such an important value to both of my parents. My mom was a very principled person. She always encouraged us to live our lives with integrity and honesty the way she did. She lived her values. Among those values was an emphasis on equality, diversity, acceptance. As a kid, I remember my Oma wanted to get me a doll, and my mom insisted that it be a black doll. It was important to my parents that we lived in Shaker, in a diverse and integrated community. When my brother Seth died, my parents suffered imaginable loss. Somehow they picked up the pieces, and my mom managed to be the best savta to my kids and the best mom to me. My mom was very wise. In addition to being wicked smart, she had special talents. Her knowledge of vocabulary was unmatched. She knew words no one had ever heard of. In fact, just about a week ago, her first day in hospice, she was able to retrieve a word that no one else could remember and I had never heard of. She also knew things about people, such a good judge of character. And my mom had a very funny side as well. I recall the summer of 1989, I worked in the Aaron Garber Library at Siegel College. I was in the stacks upstairs, and I had a question for her. And I called, Mom, from upstairs. She looked at me very sternly, and she said, "In the library, call me Jean." She maintained her sense of humor, and just last Friday, we had a wonderful night where we shared a Shabbat meal with our children, Howard and my father, mother. She told me how she'd like to attend her own funeral. She wanted to hear all of the wonderful things people would say about her. She loved the attention. Even as an adult, I had a thirst for my mother's approval. And many of you know I run the Jewish Film Festival, so after every movie I would call her to see if she liked it, basically to make sure she liked it. And she was very honest. She would say, not my favorite. But even as a middle-aged adult, I always sought her approval. I learned so much from my mom and her openness and fierce honesty. Her diagnosis of Lewy body dementia was scary at first, but she and my father decided to embrace her illness and continue living as best they could together. They continued attending cultural events, synagogue, dinners with friends, dinners with my family, never shying away from what she couldn't do, but rather adapting their lifestyle to what she could do. I'm fortunate to have learned from their beautiful 59-year love story. My mom lived as she died with dignity and with grace. My mom loved beautiful Judaica. In fact, she was likely the best customer at Treasure's gift shop at the JCC. I benefited from all of her shopping and have a wonderful selection of Judaica items in my home. For the rest of my life, I'll feel a strong and special connection to my mom when I light candles on Shabbat, because I always will remember her doing that. And finally, last Friday when we were together, my father did the Eshet Chayil for my mother. And I'll never forget when he says, "Ve'at alit al kulana," because my mother really was such a woman of valor. And my father and my mother had the most beautiful connection. I will miss her, and I promise to take care of my dad. Thank you.
Now I want to call on Jean's daughter Sharon and Jean's son-in-law Marcelo.
Where did we write this? Oh. So mine isn't nearly as well prepared. We wrote down some words while we were in the airport in Ben Gurion in Tel Aviv. As everyone knows, we've been very overwhelmed, and my family is fine, thank God, though we do know people through people who have been affected by what's going on. But I'm here to talk to my mother today. So Mom, when we said goodbye 2 months ago, when me, Marcelo, Itai, and Tair were visiting, you said you would not see me again. That's why I'm so grateful that we were able to speak weekly on WhatsApp. In one of our last conversations, you even commented twice on how gray my hair has gotten.
It is great.
Thank you. The last few days have been excruciating, as I'm sure they have been even more for those who are surrounding you. I noticed how the life in your eyes faded away, and then I knew it was time to make closure with myself. I then decided to choose the best memories that I had with you that I will keep in my heart. You taught me how to cook, which I then taught my children. Your love for Israel and Judaism is one of the reasons I live there. You taught me honesty, compassion, and acceptance, all of which I will take with me. Your endless conversations, especially when I was a teenager, along with your anxieties, taught me how much you loved me. I love you, Mom. I love you, Jean Letoffsky. אז תנוחי על משכבך בשלום, כדי שתוכלי להמשיך הלאה. So rest in peace, so that you can move forward. Yeh zichra baruch. May her memory be a blessing. It's easier in Hebrew. Sorry.
We will.
Thank you. 3 of Jean's grandchildren, Aiden, Daniel, and Lindy.
Hi, everyone. Our Savta, we always called her Savta growing up. She was a very special person in our lives, and we have some memories of her that we'd like to share, but one of her gifts to us was the easy cry gene, so we apologize if that happens during our speech. It was very important to our Savta that we had a Jewish identity and that we were strong members of the Jewish community. She strongly encouraged and convinced our parents to send us to Gross Schechter Day School, where we received the foundations of a Jewish education and learned the essentials of Jewish culture. One of our favorite memories of Savta, and we were super lucky that we got to do this, was that we were able to basically study for our Bar B'nai Mitzvot with our Saba and Savta. And so we would go over to Siegel College after school, and our Saba would tutor us in reading Torah and leading the prayers and the services, and then we would spend time working on our Devar Torah with our Savta. And while we met with her, it was less about the actual content of the Devar Torah. She wanted to be sure we knew how to deliver a speech, how to speak with poise, how to present ourselves as mature, intelligent individuals. And so our Saba and Savta were a unit, and they were always together. And we're so grateful that they played a major part in who we are today.
Our Savta is one of the most intelligent people we have ever met. A testament to that was her ability to hear a word and immediately say it backwards. For example, if I asked her to say Daniel backwards, she would respond with Leonad without hesitation. During our Schechter days, we had the treat of Saba and Savta picking us up from school. Immediately as we got in the car, we had 2 wishes. One was to go get snacks, and the other was to play a spelling bee in the back of the car. Savta would give us a word, and we had to spell it. There was nothing better than hearing the smartest person you know tell you that you spelled the word right. She cared so much about our education, and in our high school and college days, she would call to hear about what we were learning in our classes, and she was so interested and invested in our lives like no one else we've ever met. We are really going to miss her.
Saba and Safta spoiled us. They love to give us presents. Today, Aiden and Daniel are wearing kippot from Safta, and I am wearing a necklace she gave me. One of their favorite gifts was to take us to plays and other cultural events. A few months ago, I had the opportunity to go see a play with my mom, Saba, and Safta at the Dobama Theater called Life Sucks. For anyone that doesn't know, the Dobama Theater is a small theater in Cleveland Heights. At the end of Life Sucks, the actors said life is and asked a few audience members to finish the sentence. Some people said life is difficult, life is tiring, life is hard, and my Safta said life is a gift. The cast members repeated her answer, which was obviously the correct one, and responded, life is a gift, end of play, and the lights went out. It was touching. In times of suffering and pain, Safta was always able to find the positive. No matter the circumstances, she just wanted people to be happy. As Safta would want all of us to do, treat life as a gift and cherish every moment of it. We are so grateful that we have the privilege of calling you our Safta and love you so much. Thank you.
I'm pleased now to welcome forward Rabbi Joshua Jacobs, who is representing Congregation B'nai Yeshurun.
Although Rabbi Hal couldn't be here today, he prepared remarks for me to share with you all. On behalf of the B'nai Yeshurun community, we extend our deepest condolences to the entire Letoffsky family. Jean was such a special part of our synagogue family. Every year, Jean chanted Megillat Esther and Megillat Ruth on Purim and Shavuot, recounting the tales of our biblical heroes, the leading women whom we aspire to follow, Esther's bravery and faith and Ruth's kindness and devotion. Jean didn't just chant their stories in her beautiful and meticulous Hebrew according to the proper nusach, or melody. Jean embodied them and became our hero too. She was our Queen Esther and our Ruth, an incredible inspiration, teacher, guide, and friend to all of us. At B'nai Yeshurun, Jean read Torah, Haftarah, Megillot, and led services. Even as her health declined, she still chanted to perfection, inspiring us. In her quiet and unassuming way, the way of a librarian, Jean's fierce strength, faith, and devotion, her overflowing kindness and chesed, like that of Ruth, became the hallmark of the library. Jean was a brave and brilliant trailblazer. There was a recent television series called The Librarians, which followed the accolades of a group of librarians that single-handedly saved the world each week, thwarting evil, all the while discovering and protecting literary and historical treasures. I always considered Jean among the ranks of those librarians, lifting up our world through learning, building a world-class Jewish library here in Cleveland that served as the beating heart of a community of lifelong learners, teachers, rabbis, researchers, and friends. Jean was incredibly warm, generous, and kind. She was brilliant, astute, and inquisitive. She had a special ability to ask a question and then listen to the answer. So many of us can ask questions, and her questions were always spot on. But even more than that, Jean knew how to listen. When I came to Cleveland, the Aaron Garber Library at Siegel College was my refuge, the place where I went for my own personal study and to prepare for classes and sermons. Jean always anticipated that which I'd want to read or research. She would ask just the right questions and then get to work as my personal search engine before we had Google, Siri, and Safaria. She was part guide, part detective, part therapist, part teacher, part researcher, part curriculum advisor, and most of all, a treasured, reassuring friend. Alan and Jean are a part of a special Cleveland clergy group, including Lifsa and Stanley Schachter, Sheila and Michael Hecht, and Nili and Moshe Adler. I know that those friendships and connections were incredibly meaningful. We all know that the grandchildren were Jean's greatest joy. and how her face lit up when she'd talk about them, see them, talk and be with them. Alan, you were the ultimate husband and partner. In health and as health declined, your devotion, respect, and unwavering love for Jean act as a model for all of us. And as a caregiver, your selfless dedication went above and beyond. Erica and I were honored to be counted as Jean's friend. We are eternally grateful for her kindness and love she showered on us and our family. Her smile is one we will never forget, and her name will always bring blessings.
O God of life, amid the ceaseless tides of change which sweep away the generations, your love remains to comfort us and to give us hope. Around us are life and death, decay and renewal, the flowing rhythm that all things obey. Our life is a dance to a song that we cannot hear. Its melody courses through us for a little while, then it seems to cease. Whence the melody and whither does it go? In darkness as in light, we turn to you, the source of life and the answer to all of life's mysteries. As you are able, I invite you to rise now for the El Mole Rachamim.
One minute. Please sit down just for a moment, because I wouldn't be doing honor to my profession if I couldn't just say a few words. I promised Alan I'm not a rabbi, so hold me to that. So we always called Alan and Jean, my husband and I, David, our rabbinic mentors. And really, Jean was just as much a rabbi as Alan. She taught me so many things, including cooking. I use many of her recipes often, and usually call her around Pesach to make sure that I'm getting it right. And I believe it was Deborah that talked about her excellent taste. Well, I'm wearing earrings that she bought me when my husband and I got engaged in 1977, when Alan was the Hillel director in Madison, and that's how we knew them. I mean, who does that? So incredibly generous. And I, as all of us, are going to miss her very much. Please rise. El Male Rachamim Shochein Mamromim Hamtzei Mechna Hamtzei Menucha Nechona Tachat Kanfei Hashchina Im Kedoshim Utehorim Ki Zohara Rakia Mazhirim Et Nishmat Yael Bat Aharon V'Brinda Shenachana Leolama Bal Harachamim Yastirea B'Seter Knafav Leolamim Bitzror Achayim Amishkava Vinomar Amen.
Compassionate God, eternal Spirit of the universe, grant perfect rest in your sheltering presence to Jean Letoffsky, our loved one who has entered eternity. O God of mercy, let her find refuge in the shadow of your wings, and let her soul be bound up in the bond of everlasting life. God is her inheritance. May she rest in peace, and let us say together, Amen. You may be seated. I want to announce that Jean's family will receive friends at Congregation B'nai Yeshurun immediately after our interment ceremony, and they will receive friends until 7 o'clock this evening. In addition, the family will be sitting Monday through Thursday from 1 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 7 o'clock to 9 o'clock in the evening at the home of Deborah and Howard Bobrow at 5327 Somme Center Road. And you are encouraged to enter through the Hawthorne Parkway from 1 to 4 and from 7 to 9 Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And each night the minyan will begin at 7 o'clock in the evening. Once again, on behalf of the family, we're so pleased and honored that you are here with us to honor Jean. Your presence gives the family a great deal of support. This concludes our service, which will continue at graveside at the Beit Olam Cemetery.